Hello and welcome back to Rev Endurance Sports, and today we're going to talk about a little bit of education on the lake cycling shoes. As many of you know, I talk about lake cycling shoes on this channel quite a bit. I own several pair of lake shoes, the 403 in the race last. We'll talk about what that means. And I also own a lace-up shoe, which is a competition last. But I thought it'd be a good time to talk about what each one of these lasts look like and what some of the characteristics are. In the past, I've had to read it and then try to distill it and then try to explain it to the customer and all this other stuff. But right here in the corner here, I plan to put a graphic of what the 4 different lasts look like. And I think this is one of the best ways to explain each one of these lasts, because when you're reading the text, and even for myself who has sold hundreds, I guess, of shoes, unless you have them next to each other, have you ever seen those games where they say, you know, what's different about these pictures? And so, you know, you have a character on there and one's got a pipe and one doesn't have a pipe, and you circle that, right? So unless you have 2 things, 3 things, in this case 4 things to compare side by side, sometimes it's very difficult to understand what they mean. Well, this has a wider toe box than this, and this has a narrower heel than this, right? So that's why I'm putting this video out. I sell lake shoes. I ship them all across the country. So if you're in the US, I would love to earn your business in selling you a pair of what I think are, without a doubt, the best cycling shoes I have ever worn. And the fact that my customers sometimes buy another pair, a third pair, tells me that they've probably never had a better fitting shoe, and so now they've said, okay, this shoe works for me, I'm going to buy another pair. And I say this also with saddles. Once you find a saddle that works, please buy several of them. I used to say 2, but now buy several. And that doesn't mean you shop for me and you have to buy 2 or 3 saddles for me. But the point is, by the time you go back to, let's say you build another bike 5 years hence, and you go back to find this saddle, or to look for this saddle, you can't find it. So, all right, so let's get on with lake. Now, one of the things that they claim is that they make 300 and different models, or 300 and different shoes, 390 different shoes, because they're models and their sizes. So they have many models: road, tri, mountain, gravel, and then you take those models and then you have sizes, and then you take those sizes and you have different widths, right? So this must be an insane chart as far as their inventory and their you know, what are they going to carry forward? What are they going to update? What are they going to, I mean, it just must be insane. So 390, and they claim to have the most lasts of any cycling shoe in the industry. So of course, what that means for you is that hopefully within all these different sizes, all these different models, well, let's start with models, sizes, and widths, we should be able to find something that fits your foot perfectly, but at least 90-something%, right? Okay, so we have 4 different lasts that we want to talk about. Now, the chief engineer, gentleman's name is Hutch. I've been in contact with him in the past, sometimes directly, sometimes indirectly, as an email has gone around from department to department. Even with these 390 models, sizes, widths, there are a few sizes that are still kind of missing, the 49 here and there. There's a few things going on. So, but I know that they are being proactive about filling in some of those holes. But that's for really large, wide feet for 90-something% of the population. You typically will fit below, a 48 or possibly a 50. So not everyone needs a 49, so it hasn't been a priority for them. So I get that. Okay, let's talk about the 4 different lasts. They are Comfort Plus, Sport, Competition, and then Race Last. Now, oftentimes I get someone who aesthetically may like a certain shoe, but that last is not going to work for them. So for example, I may have someone that likes the competition shoe, the shoe models within the competition last, but once we do the measurements on their feet, it's just not going to work. All right, so let's start with how each one of these lasts, and I think that should be the way that you purchase the shoe. Find the shoe that fits, or find the last that fits, also on their sizing matrix, and then choose a model within that, because there's going to be price points also within each one of those lasts. All right, so Comfort Plus, just so I get it right, it's for wider feet. Now again, I will try to put a graphic up here so you can see what that looks like. So it's designed for wider feet, the CX and the MX. So typically CX means road, and then MX is mountain. So that is the 201 shoe. I've sold several of those in this shop. I've done unboxing on a lot of these models of shoes, not always, but if I have, I'll put a description, a link in the description for the 201, and that's a shoe with a mesh on it. So sometimes that's the appropriate shoe if you got, feet that your toes come up a little bit or something like that, and you need a little bit more flexibility in the upper. You go with that knit of the 201. Okay. Now I've had people, because the way the sole and the knit comes over, their feet have been bigger than the measured last, but they're okay because the knit over the top of the shoe allows a little bit more. I don't know how much percent, but it allows a little bit more. All right, the next one is the Sport Last. A larger, more roomy toe box and more foot control on the heel of the shoe and in the saddle of the shoe. So you get a roomier toe box, but it's going to be a little bit more narrower to provide you with more control. Examples of that shoe are the CX and MX 177. Now we start moving into the shoes that are on their upper end of their price range, but also more specificity as it keeps going this direction. So Comfort Plus, Sport Last, now we're in the Competition Last. And the Competition houses the most popular shoes that I sell. So let's talk about that. So it's got a larger toe box and tighter heel than the Comfort, but more volume than the Sport. It's interesting because it is a competition last, but it's going to provide you with a little more volume and the tighter heel. So some folks, when they are trying to get that wider toe box, they end up with a shoe that has too wide of a heel, and so their heel comes up out of the heel cup. So, how do you get that wider toe box and still get a tighter heel? This is important. And the shoes on this one are the CX MX 238. Now we're going to talk about the Race Last. Now the Race Last does carry their top end shoe, the CX 403, and also the 302, which I believe is their lightweight climbing shoe or something like that. So CX MX 302, CX MX403. One important thing about the 403, it does not come in 3 different lasts. So you have to really study that sizing chart. So if you're someone with a wide foot that fits in the competition shoe, you won't fit that wide foot. And I think it used to be called extra wide, now it's just called wide. That won't fit in the race shoe in their largest width. All right, so let's talk about this. So it's narrower than the comp, less volume than the sport, and it's for a slimmer fitting foot, and it's more suitable for racing. But listen, any one of these shoes you can use for racing, because as long as your feet are comfortable, you can race, right? Or not race, but the point is, it's not only the race last is suitable for racing. All of them would be. It's just more specific for a racing application. Now, here's the thing about the race last. A lot of people fall in love with that top-end shoe, but as I mentioned, it's not wide enough for most people. Now, it also is different than any other shoe in their lineup because the carbon of the sole comes up and wraps around. Stand by a sec. Right? So I will bend down the leather portion of the top. So you can see that there. And then it comes around the back as well. And you can mold the heel cup. So as I mentioned before on the Comfort Plus with that knit upper, this is not going to provide any flexibility or additional width to that rider because it's full carbon coming up. It also has a very stiff section here and a lot of support coming here. So for the 403, I mean, you really have to fit in that sizing metric. Otherwise, you're going to be bumping up against the two sides that are rigid by design, okay? Because I honestly think this is the best shoe I've ever worn. And if you can fit into this shoe, please consider upgrading from any of the other shoes, but in particular from the competition up to the race last. Okay, so the closures are awesome. The support that your foot feels, I mean, your foot just feels, so this being your foot and this being the carbon bathtub, if you will, it just eliminates so many problems. I've worn these on all kinds of lengths of unsupported events. Paris Press Paris last year, I did a lot of walking around, getting from where they park the bike to where you get your card, your brevet card, passport stamped, and I was fine. So I walked in them, I cycled in them. Basically, pedal time was 51 hours. I never had any foot issues. So anyway, that is going to be all for today. I hope you understand a little bit better how these lasts are designed. If you still have some questions or comments, drop them down below. Between the community of folks that follow my channel, many of you already own Lake shoes. You can make comments and share your personal experiences with them. And maybe you can say, all right, well, my foot measured this. I wanted this last, but I ended up with this last and I'm happy. Or vice versa. I didn't like that last. Something like that. And I just think the Lake shoe lineup is incredible, vast, and you should be able to find something within their sizing Metrics. Matrix? Metrics? Okay. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please like and subscribe. We'll see you up the road.